Hey everyone. So I just told Ryan that he's now demoted to associate MC because this crowd is clearly not warmed up enough. So thank you, Ryan. Yesterday's warm up was so good. We used figurative language, my favorite. We joked about pennies. Who would have thought? And here we are, not even smiling yet.
The end of the world at 1:20
Yeah,
Central Time.
that's it. So we did survive the SMS end of days. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So mine went off twice, once with everybody else's, and once like 10 minutes later. And the second one was in Spanish. So I got kind of a multilingual flavor of yesterday's alert. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, so here we are, another panel discussion. This one I was really excited about because I have such respect for the gentleman on stage. I think Robert has introduced himself about 18 times now. But Omar, can you tell everybody about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Omar Khawaja. I am VP of Security at Databricks, and prior to this, I spent 9 years at Highmark Health in their security program. I have the privilege of sitting on the High Trust Board, and I get to teach at Carnegie Mellon's CISO program, so I feel very lucky.
Well, we're very lucky to have you on stage to talk about sort of the transforming role of the CISO inside of organizations. And I think about IT as, an industry in a constant state of change. Maybe change is the only constant. And also, cyber risk and the attackers that we're facing and the risks also in a constant state of change. So in my opinion, like the first way to be successful, maybe the primary way to be successful is to acknowledge that you can't always know everything all the time about the environment that you have to feel like you have some mastery in. So there's sort of this acknowledgement that to be successful at a certain level, you have to be able to act as an expert and be seen as an expert, but also not be a full cup because it's impossible to fill a cup that's already full. So I want to get both of your thoughts on maybe just the value of humility and curiosity for leaders at your level.
I'll tell you, I haven't shared this in a large group before, but this is a cozy group, so this works. The reason I stopped being a CISO is because I felt like my humility was at an all-time low. And I would literally show up at board meetings and not having reviewed my own slides. So that is the opposite of what someone should be doing if they want to be successful over the long term. And not having humility can feel good for some period of time, but it does not end very well. I think it's super important, the world that we live in with that constant change, because what humility does, it does two things. It opens up our minds to learn, and it also opens us up to have better relationships with people, because how many of us say, I really like that guy, he's so arrogant, he's so much fun to hang out with, right? But the humble people sort of, I loved what Jeremy said about the cup isn't full. If I don't have that humility, my cup is full. My cup is full from a social perspective. I'm the smartest, most interesting, best personality. My cup is full from an intellectual perspective. I don't really need to learn or gain from anyone else. And the reality is the rate at which things are changing and evolving and innovation is happening, if I don't have the ability to learn, if I don't have the ability to collaborate, I'm probably not going to do a good job delivering.
Yeah, I love the question, Jeremy. I look back over 30 years now, so I have a lot of the gray hair, and it's like being the president. I'm only 28, but I was a CISO, so no, I look back over many years, and I actually think of all of the people that have allowed me to have this incredible journey of serving and helping and growing, not just growing myself, but growing people, growing the organizations I've served, and we've served together. And I think it's interesting. We're in a career now where being a security leader is not only a cool role, but it's frankly, if you look at any of the economic indicators, it's considered to be one of the most lucrative roles for an IT or a governance leader. I mean, we're in high demand. There's a lot of interest and a lot of competition for qualified security talent. And to your point about reflecting on humility, Omar, I think that's a real burden for us because it's a real risk to forget that some of us and many of us started here before this was a cool career, and it was really a mission, and it was oriented on mission and on a focus on trying to do the right thing to be protective, to be helpful, to be enabling, and I think those attributes, and especially those attributes in the context of working across a team, are so critical. I mean, I get to work with Jeremy almost every day, and I learn so much from him and from the team around him and our research team and others, this incredibly brilliant people, and you go back through time, and I think the art of this is to, if I could use a cliched coaching analogy, the art of it is to bring the best to the table, but recognize I can't play all the positions, and so that level of understanding that I can't possibly know it all, and if I try to, or I try to be the person with the only voice, we're going to contribute to things that are not helpful. So, and I think the curiosity dimension as well really strikes me because, we talked yesterday about AI, and Omar and I spent a lot of time talking about AI and his area of expertise as he's learning in that area. I have so much yet to know, and I'll never know it all. So, I think asking people to educate us and looking for the opportunity with humility in every encounter you have to say, what more can I learn and how can I stimulate us learning together is so cool. And I think this is such a fascinating field for those that are working in it, for all of us, because we have the opportunity to experience two things I think that are really stimulating. The first is constant change and constant innovation, because everything we see, is going to have some security or some compliance component to it. I think the second thing that it affords us is an opportunity, if we choose to open our eyes, to see how our business operates from the very front of the business where we engage with the people we serve, all the way to the back office or the processes that allow us to, care for the information that people have that is concerning and sensitive to them, but also make sure that our organization has the efficiency and the opportunity to be there for the people we serve. So, how many jobs do you get to know the whole value chain if you choose to open your eyes? And so I think it's just a fascinating opportunity to not only do that as a leader myself, but to invite the people I get to work with to say, let's recognize the breadth of what we do as an organization.
Yeah, I'll share something tangible with all of you. Like, all of you clearly are here because you're willing to invest in your learning and want to know more. All of your colleagues are not like that. I've had people like that on my teams in the past where I've said, you need to learn. And when I hear the response that says, well, Omar, we don't have time, can you like free up like a day for us so we can learn? I said, I don't want you on my team. Because, like, do you make time? It's not that you don't have time, it's that you don't think it's important. You're not prioritizing it. You have 168 hours in your week, just like everyone else. And you're telling me you can't make 3, 4, 5 hours a week to learn, to invest in yourself, because that learning is something that stays with you, unlike almost anything else that we do during our week. So you should be selfish. You should be learning every single week. And I said, and my team would say, well, can you tell us how much? And I was like, it's really up to you, but they would push me on it. I said, at least 5 hours. If you're not investing 5 hours every single week on your learning, you should not be in security.
I remember an anecdote, a very poignant conversation I had with my team, and it was back when cloud was first starting. And we were having these long conversations about needing to find a great cloud boot camp to send my team to. And there were roles in the team that clearly needed that level of investment. And so, but I remember saying, at the time the company had licensed technology from, I can't remember who, it doesn't matter. And, we had access to, all the services because the company had the ability to create accounts for the team. I said, it's there for you. It's there for you. You can go and experiment with the knowledge you have, and two things happen. You have context and knowledge that it will accelerate your learning because you learn from where you already are an expert. And secondly, you have access to it. I mean, this is people could cliche say, you can watch YouTube videos, you can do this, you can do that. The world is so rich in terms of opportunities to stretch ourselves and grow. And I think that's right, Omar. I think people that are learners and are curious are the people that are are going to be ready for the situation where we actually don't know the answer and we have to find it together. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And it's a good segue into our next question. Basically, I like to think about the concept of the Johari window, which is not new at all, but it's about who knows what. And it defines blind spots, which is stuff that other people know about you, but you don't know about yourself. And it also defines sort of unknowns, which are things that are unknown to both you and others, and both of which in our industry create the opportunity for bad things to happen. If there's something you don't know about yourself and your environment, but the adversaries do, then they can take advantage of that blind spot. And if there's an unknown, there's also who knows what can happen. So I'd ask both of you, sort of what are some strategies that have both worked for you personally to stay abreast of sort of the emergent IT risks and IT threats, maybe even in a more broad perspective, just as a business? How do you keep sort of that, reduce those unknowns and those blind spots, being a busy executive and not having, maybe already having an overflowing plate?
Yeah, I can start. I think it comes from a place of recognizing that every opportunity and encounter is an opportunity to learn and to grow. And I mean, there are very tactical things like, listening to other leaders and experts that have chosen to put their expertise out, and make it available, which is certainly valuable. But I actually think this week has been a terrific example of how you actually accomplish this, is hearing from people that are expert at the things we're talking about and actually hearing them challenge back. And like I heard you say this, a great example 2 days ago. I was talking about how encouraging people to think about using measured and managed for looking at those most critical controls and validating that they're staying effective. And I had two people from the audience come up to me afterwards and said, Robert, I like that idea a lot, but I just don't think we have enough. We don't know enough about how to actually do that. And it was an opportunity for me to say, wow, I'm actually learning from you when I'm supposed to be teaching here too. So I think that level of engagement, and last thing I'd say is it's not purely the technical aspects of it. It's the interpersonal, the social, and the cultural aspects of it. It's understanding how the work we do impacts the people we serve. It's understanding how the world we live in is evolving and changing. And so I think maybe I'd describe it as being well-rounded, trying to think of the expertise that we offer as trying to be a well-rounded leader and not a expert and a deep technical leader alone. That's very valuable, certainly, but I think being able to explain in context is helpful. So I try to find those encounters where people can challenge me or where I can just learn with others. And like Omar and I talking about AI this week in the workshops we had, I was very much the student there, while also trying to talk about what we think about it. So it's fun and it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think this is so central to being successful, certainly in cyber, but with everything that's happening in the world of AI and LLMs, all of our roles, no matter what we're doing, are likely going to be impacted significantly. And we should all be thinking, how do we move forward and be excited about this and move forward with confidence? And this is the key. If we're thinking, I'm going to keep doing my job the same way I was doing it a year or two ago, that's when you're in trouble. For me, it started with this ethos of feedback is a gift. And if you can actually believe that, you're in great shape. Probably one of the smartest people alive right now is this Nobel Prize winner named Danny Kahneman. And you should read about how he thinks of feedback as being a gift and just his approach to feedback, and it'll change your mind. From a structural perspective, there's ways to get feedback. We've got whistleblower programs, we've got compliance hotlines, we've got bug bounty programs, we've got pen testing, and we've got red teams, we've got auditors. Don't think of your auditors as being the adversary. Think of your auditors as being a force for good, because what are they going to give you? Their whole goal in life is to provide feedback, is to help you be better. So engage them, work with them, maybe even tell them where to look, like tell them where you think the problem spots are and say, can you please look here and look deeper because I haven't had a chance, and feel like you're actually collaborating and partner with them. I know for me personally, some of the feedback I'd get in surveys was, Omar, we don't feel comfortable giving you feedback because it seems like you always know the answer. So I did not have humility. And so I started these sessions called Ask the CISO sessions, and I would show up with lots of humility. I would start by saying, here's why I suck, here's what my gaps are, and so to open it up for people to feel comfortable to give me feedback, and I would get some pretty directed questions and feedback from my team, and I would do this about 40 times a year. Important that you have all of this feedback and you're balancing it with some action. So if you're getting a lot of this feedback and you're not changing, either personally or the program as a result, then it's kind of all for naught, and that can backfire. So make sure you're also figuring out what to do with it. The last thing I'd say is, sometimes we have this knee-jerk reaction of saying, I don't know what to do. My favorite word in the English language is yet. So just say, I don't know what to do yet, because that then opens up the door to say, you know what, I think I'm gonna figure this out. So never put a period at the end of I don't know, just add the word yet, you're gonna figure it out. One of my favorite quotes is, proceed as if success is inevitable.
So we've got sort of an unofficial high trust Discord, and I've been very lucky this week to meet people that I've been chatting with on the Discord. Here, we chatted, right? It's a chat service. And we met, and even before we met in person on the Discord, one of my first questions to the chat room was like, hey, what can we do better at High Trust? Like, what are some of the things about the report or the assessment process or your assessor experience that we can do better? And then again, like I said, very lucky to meet several individuals in person here, and I spent maybe more time than I should have asking, like, hey, what are the pain points in your most recent experience? And they might have left thinking, man, that was a weird conversation. They barely asked me about my business, and Jeremy barely asked me about these other things, and maybe I should have done more of that. But I feel like there's an opportunity in all of us and all of our execution to grow. But one of the things I think about as well is trying to achieve goals whenever there's so much change, especially with like AI is going to change a lot of the way people think about their future strategy in the next few years. And I often think the plan is not the goal is the goal, and if the plan doesn't work, we will make a new plan to reach that goal. And it's super easy to get wrapped up in the plan, and did the plan fail? Okay, and if the plan failed, now we're a failure. Not necessarily. The goal is the goal. The plan is the way to get you there. But I wanted to ask you both, thinking about the backdrop of, I don't know, something like Moore's Law that famously tried to predict computing power over time in IT, which is such a drastically changing industry. Moore himself came out and said, that law is going to be dead by 2025. So do you have any insights into how to effectively plan when so much is changing around us?
Yeah, I think, we created this thing, we would call it relentless incrementalism, and the idea was not to start with perfect, but the idea was to try to approach perfect, and the team kept trying to create plans that were precise and perfect, and I knew with 100% confidence that every plan we would not execute perfectly, so the point of creating a perfect plan seemed just like a really flawed approach. So we actually defined relentless incrementalism, and we defined it as something like create an imperfect plan. Like, this is what we actually wrote down on paper. Create an imperfect plan, execute it with best effort, find the flaws in the plan, make the plan slightly less imperfect, and just repeat. So when you hear about Agile, you hear about lean startup, those are the types of things we absolutely have to adopt. The ecosystems within which we operate are way more complex than can be perceived by any individual, and that you can think about the consequence and the second order effects of what you're doing. So the best thing to do is what we've been saying in the world of cyber for a long time is, yes, we want to try to prevent, we want to be good at detect, but let's be awesome at respond. Because if we're awesome at respond, we can actually reduce the impact and go right back to prevent again. We need to be doing that in the way that we deliver and that we execute, to accept that everything isn't going to happen perfectly, because if you look back over however long you've been working, you probably are going to be hard-pressed to find any single complex project plan that was actually executed flawlessly. So why think that things are actually going to change this time?
Yeah, so I will confess to looking in the mirror. Fairly early in my career, I'm a pretty compulsive person, as people that know me would attest to. And I was oftentimes the one seeking the perfect plan, Omar, early on. And I realized at some point that, and maybe this is why some of us go to compliance and security as a discipline, because it has a lot of structure, there's a lot of expectations, there's a lot of feedback in terms of, you know, you're checking off, you're doing what you're supposed to do, and so forth. So that was attractive to me early in career. But I recognized at some point in time that I was surrounded by people that were the same, and I wish I'd had you, Omar, at that time to challenge me and challenge our organization, because I spent a lot of time saying, you know, deferring. I can't present a plan yet to leadership because I don't quite know enough. And there was just an epiphany. It was actually my CTO, who I really learned a ton from, and very good friend still today. And you know, he said something to me. He said, Robert, he said, you don't have to be perfect to be good. He said, you just have to make progress. And it was literally, I almost wanted to put it on my mirror in the morning, because it was such an epiphany for me to say, okay, how am I trying to seek perfection or completeness or clarity? And I like the way you encapsulated that, Omar, because I had to learn. And I remember the meeting with my team where I pulled them aside and said, okay, and this was my last job as United early in my tenure there. I said, okay, we're doing it wrong. We're going to do it differently. We're going to start. And we're going to start with what we know, and the goal will be to start tomorrow with what we know, with the plan we can put together based on what we have. And especially in an organization where you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of things you want to manage, you're always looking to finish, and you're never done. Yeah. You're never done. So,
and I think what Robert mentioned right there is like the hardest part. Like, this is where this is the point of failure, is when you're looking at yourself, you know what you're doing is wrong, but it's so much more convenient to just keep doing it, versus saying to your team, confessing, especially as the leader, to say, hey, I got this wrong and we're going to find a better way. But the moment you become comfortable saying what Robert said, you'll find that the whole world opens up, your anxiety level goes down, you become such a stronger leader and such a better team player, everyone wants to work with you, and your projects actually start delivering much better results.
And so as these plans get executed and the organization comes together with IT, and you know what, we're going to implement this new technology, we're going to run toward this goal by executing this plan, there's a lot of, you know, eagerness and momentum for that bus, that train to leave the station. And from a compliance and risk, and hopefully less so security perspective, it can feel like, you know, I hope I get a seat on that bus, instead of having to chase after the bus and saying, hey, wait, you know, don't forget that you've got to do it in a manner that's compliant, or a manner that doesn't ignore security. And it's a tough thing in certain organizational cultures to ensure that security and risk and compliance are brought to the planning session of, this is the path we're going to go on the bus as we all ride together, and not be sort of chasing it, to say, you know what, don't forget about me, and my function is important too. You guys' thoughts on helping ensure that kind of security, risk, and compliance functions sort of do get a seat on that bus, and maybe a seat in the driver's seat, so to speak?
Yeah, I can start. I actually think it's the things we've been talking about through this session: humility, curiosity, not seeking perfection, you know, relentless incrementalism. Is that how you said it, Omar? I think actually demonstrating that as your leadership shadow and the culture of leadership that you bring to your organization, and offering to help, saying, I'm here to help. I think those things earn you not just the right to be on the bus, but an invitation to be near the front of the bus and helping move the organization forward. So I remember a project we did. It was actually the recovery, my previous company, the recovery of healthcare.gov. We were asked to come in and help work on that project, you know, early in the life cycle when it was going really hard. And it was, you know, I remember the meeting with the leadership, the executive of the company, saying, okay, what are the people we need? And it was by name, it wasn't by function. And, you know, it turned out to be a person that worked in compliance, a person in audit, I was asked to be a part of the team, not because we were the security and the compliance and the operational functions, but because I think we had earned a reputation for just being adaptive and flexible. And it's a cliche term, but you'll hear this people say, don't be the no police, or don't be the Knights of No, and I would hope that most of us in this role of leadership now have grown beyond that reputation, but it is really easy for us to be seen as sort of like a friction point or an impediment to progress. And if that's happening a lot, then we have to ask ourselves, what do we need to change in the approach we take? So.
Yeah, I think Robert's right. Like, if you want to earn a seat at the bus, more often than not, the business has decided where the bus is going. Mm-hmm. So what we often do is we try to change the direction of the business. And we don't intend to do this, but when we go in and we say, hey, we really need to be compliant, we really need to address this security vulnerability, we really need this particular technology, that sounds like we're saying that's where the bus needs to go. And that's where we often make the mistake. Like, the reason Robert got selected for that recoveryhealthcare.gov project is because he was seen as someone that was aligned with where the bus was going. The CEO of the organization and the board had the prerogative to decide where the bus of the business is going. The rest of us in the organization, our job is to figure out how to get it there in the right way, and in our case, to do it securely, to do it safely. Now, of course, if the business is doing something that is unethical, then of course it's a whole different matter. But I'd say, the challenge that we often have in the world of security is we're very egocentric. We really make it about us, when what we should be making it about is whatever the business is looking to do, and making it about them. So instead of saying, do this to be compliant, no, do this because we want your project to be successful. And here's a way that the regulators could delay your project. So do you want your project to be delayed? No. Okay, well, let's be compliant for your project, not for me, but for you. So getting the pronouns right. Oftentimes when I hear security leaders talk, when I review people's business cases and how they're talking to the business, I'm like, it sounds like you want the business to serve you. It's the exact opposite. We're all here to serve the business. Let's figure out how we can align to the business versus doing it the other way around.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of counseling, marital counseling type of stuff. Is that when my team come to me and the conversation is they are doing, or we need to stop them from doing, that's like the highest red flag in terms of my leadership culture. Is like, okay, we have. And it's not the issue at hand. It's how we engage with our partners. And I can think of circumstances and times where, I had to be patient with the fact that something was proceeding, in a manner that I wasn't fully comfortable with. But what the greatest conversation in the world is to go to that senior business leader, the person that has the peer level relationship, and say, listen, I think this is ill-advised, and let me tell you why in plain, simple English, not technical speak, but I'm here with you, and we're going to be accountable together to walk this road to get it right, while we understand we're operating in risk, and say, listen, I'm not here to say no, I'm not here to shut you down, I'm here to say, can you help me, please? And I tell you what, I can think maybe one or two times in my career of many opportunities to have a conversation like that, where a business leader just said, yeah, no, we're not doing that, Robert. We're going to do it our way. And most of the time they're like, I'm really grateful to know there's a problem, and I'm really grateful to have you help me figure out how to get there. And thanks for being patient with my organization as we grow. And that reflects the culture of the company you're in, because if you see that humility among your peers asking you for help and patience, then you're in a great place. You're in a place that you can grow and thrive. So I think it's a shared thing from the business. It's not security or operations or executive leadership. It's all of us caring about where we're going.
I'll add to that and try to come up with an actionable example. How many of you work for an organization that runs hospitals or clinics? Okay. How easy is it to get doctors to listen to you? So here's a pro tip, and it's so easy, anybody can do it. Maybe it doesn't even need to have the word pro in it then. So here's how I get doctors to listen. I would go to the and I remember doing this distinctly with the chair of the cardiology department. Do you think his ego is like here, or do you think it's up here? I mean, he runs the freaking heart, right? So I go into his office, I look around, and what do you see on the walls of a doctor's office? It's not pictures of them, unless it's a gynecologist, then that's very different. But it's typically pictures of the babies, just to be clear. Sorry. But you know, you see pictures of themselves on magazines and magazine covers and their diplomas. So what does that tell you about them? They have very large. And what do you think they want the world to be about? About them. So if I come in there and I talk about security and I talk about ransomware and I talk about 2FA, do you think they're going to listen to me? Do you think they care? Do you think I care about that, right? And so it's so easy for me to say, I care about it, therefore I'm going to make it your problem. I just sat there and I said, I'm just going to talk to him. I just want to learn about him. And I mean, cardiologists probably make every hour, they could easily be making over $1,000. So he had booked an hour with me, or I'd booked an hour with his admin, and I was like, this must be a mistake, because which cardiologist would want to spend an hour or $1,000 with their security person? That feels absurd. We're sitting, and every minute I'm thinking he's going to fake a page, his admin's going to come in and say, you know, doctor, you've been called to surgery and you need to leave. And we're sitting, it's been 20 minutes, it's been 30 minutes. Why? Because he's getting to talk about himself. He's getting to talk about the department he built. And I just keep asking, tell me about this. I'm curious about this, because I am. It's the heart. Like, how often do you get time with a cardiologist? Guess what happens at the 45-minute mark? What do you think? He's like, maybe I should ask you about you. And then he says, well, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, funny that you ask. But like, that's what we need to do. Get the timing right. Like, don't deliver information when people aren't going to perceive it. For those of you that have kids, you know this all too well. When your kids are not listening, it doesn't matter how hard you try and how loud you get, nothing gets through. So wait for them to be receptive, and the easiest way to do that is just sit there and talk about them. One of the things that's ingrained in the human psyche is this need for reciprocity. So if I'm asking about you, at some point you're going to break and say, maybe I should ask about the other guy too.
That's cool. Thanks for that, Omar. I appreciate that a lot. First page, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. Ask them about them,
yeah.
Right? I love that. So many plans and buses and trains or whatever else you want are leaving the station now, heading toward AI. And apologies for the figurative language. I'm such a fan, and it's a pained analogy, whatever, so I'll stop that. In 2011, there was a really famous post by Mark Andreessen. I want to say he founded Netscape, and now he's a really prominent tech investor. And in his article, he was basically saying, he's saying software is eating the world. And if you don't invest in software and become a software company, you will be left behind. And he was proved right, because so many leaders in their respective industries are now software companies that happen to be good at the industry they're in. So very recently, the CEO of Databricks published, Omar's company, published an article, and the headline of the article, a very interesting read, was AI is eating software. Omar, can you kind of tell us how we should interpret that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, think of it as, like, software was replacing much of the work that was being done manually, cognitively by human beings, and software allowed us to do that repeatedly, do that at scale, and do that without breaking a sweat in most cases. AI is starting to do the same thing. AI, as many of you know, can be used to, especially generative AI, it can not only generate chats and generate pictures and generate video, but it can generate code. And so there's many examples of people doing proof of concepts. Like, do you remember the, what was it, was it Floppy Bird? Do you guys remember that Floppy Bird?
The game?
The game?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you have to go through like the gaps in the wall and stuff. So this guy showed how he was able to create that entire game without writing a line of code. He just went to his favorite generative AI tool and said, okay, write me code that does this, write me code that does this. oh wait, the gravity function wasn't working, can you fix it? And it keeps on doing that, and he gives the feedback, and eventually he has created the Flappy Bird game without writing a single line of code. That's happening over and over again at places like Microsoft, Google. 20, 30, 40% of the code that's being written isn't being written by a human, it's actually being written by AI. Our CEO says, the universal language in the future, the universal coding language in the future isn't going to be Python, isn't going to be Java, isn't going to be C#, isn't going to be what someone is dreaming up as the next programming language. The universal programming language of the future, and I'd say very close future, is English. So if you can say it, you can create code to do it.
So where should we slot sort of AI in the organizational risk landscape? Is it a child to cybersecurity risks? Is it a peer to cybersecurity risks? Is it akin to sort of reputational risks or operational risks? Like, help me slot where in the risk hierarchy of the enterprise as a whole do I slot AI risks?
I think first of all.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert, for taking that one.
Well, I'm gonna say something and pitch it to you probably, but I think Omar just gave me a great example to build on. It's certainly not subordinate to enterprise risk or cybersecurity risk, and I think if you look at why people are doing these things they're doing with AI, and they're seeking the advantages that it can afford the business and the opportunities to really serve faster and with more efficiency and do the things we do even better. It's actually around the business being able to execute at the pace that's going to be necessary to continue to succeed. So I would put it among the highest levels of enterprise risk, because it's really specific to whether or not the business is able to remain relevant, to take the opportunity to leverage new and exciting methods and capabilities, and effectively, operate in the more contemporary way, the way that the competition and the market is going to expect. So, which is why I think if we engage, going back to getting on the bus, if we engage with this, well, you have to think about it from a cybersecurity perspective or privacy perspective, and we say we're here to say you can't do that yet. I think you're in a really weak starting point, and so I think understanding the business context is key. So I elevate it very high up in the stack. I don't even know if there's a hierarchy sometimes in terms of enterprise risk. I think you just sort of say what level of operational risk would happen if this does not succeed, or we're not able to harness the power and the capability this would offer to the company. And then certainly what happens if we get it wrong and it doesn't work operationally, or it breaks the business operationally, which is more around integrity of operations, availability, keeping current. So, I see it high, because I think it is how do we write software in the future, Omar. Yeah. It's how do we do those things, and if you're trying to write software with people in 5 years, you're probably too slow. So,
I think the thing that makes AI, and particularly Gen AI, so exciting both positively and negatively is because of how pervasive it is. I've had conversations with my parents, with my doctor friends, with tech people, with retailers, yesterday with a marketer. Like, there's a way, an application for this for pretty much everyone in any role. And if you're curious about what those different use cases look like, databricks.com/solution/accelerator, we've got 67 different ways that organizations are using AI to change and to be better at what they're doing and be more competitive. To me, it almost feels like, it is that pervasive risk. I think it's going to be hard pressed to say it's the domain of a silo within the enterprise. It goes across the enterprise, kind of like COVID. When COVID happened, it affected everyone. It affected every function. It wasn't just technology or just HR or just marketing or people in the office or people not in the office, people in the US, like, it was everyone. Same with, many organizations had an enterprise risk around talent. Talent affects every department across every part of the enterprise. AI is right up there, as Robert said, it's going to affect every part of the organization. And it's sort of twofold. One is the risk of doing AI, and the other is the risk of not doing AI.
Yeah, I hope I'm not being too dramatic where I think about, I don't know, Blockbuster executives so long ago might have looked at, the rise of high bandwidth internet and the availability of streaming, and maybe didn't see it as a going concern risk like they should have.
Yeah. Yeah, and they actually had the opportunity to buy Netflix for $40 million.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, I actually think about, if we think about it as the opportunity to bring many colleagues that are not traditionally thinking about the things that technology has traditionally delivered, you know, into the fold. I mean, how many of our business leaders are going to learn and adapt AI and generative AI, large language models, and so forth? I have a son that's a resident in medicine, family medicine, and we were just talking about this topic, and I said, have you had any conversation with your peers or your program about, you know, how is AI going to impact medicine, and you know, without attributing it to where it came from? In general, the sense was, well, we'll keep our head down and it's going to pass over like all innovations that try to disrupt the physician experience. I said, what do you think? He said, I think I need to learn how to use AI as a doctor. And and those are going to be the future leaders in that field, because they're going to be the ones that learn to harness the power to do so much more with the human imagination that's possible. So we're actually there helping our colleagues learn, and also helping them learn to do it with safety and be trustworthy and be responsible about it. So that's good.
I'm really glad you brought up the example of sort of AI in the healthcare space, and I think about maybe another disruptive technology that's much further along down the adoption curve. When I think about when the cloud first came out, there was a whole lot of resistance from healthcare, specifically, and other industries that deal with very sensitive data, about I'm not going to put this sensitive data into the cloud. And it took a while to sort of climb over that resistance and demonstrate, yes, this is a trustworthy environment. It feels like a very different environment now, where just the other day I saw there's sort of breaches about I'm putting too much sensitive data in the cloud, and or if not organizationally, the actual employees are doing it, oops, by accident. I don't know why. Like, why is there such a different adoption? Like, I'm so much more comfortable throwing it into this disruptive tech compared to the previous big disruptive tech in healthcare, for example.
I could maybe share a couple points on that. One is that the barrier to entry is non-existent. So with the cloud, I needed to go to Amazon or Azure, I needed to give them a credit card, and then that was one. With Gen AI, all I need is an email and a password. I don't even need a credit card. And with cloud, I would have to create some kind of plumbing, because the cloud isn't just work. I can't just copy paste something into the cloud. I've got to connect it to something, or set up a database, or set up a web layer, a UI. Like, it's not an application. It's just a set of building blocks. It's like, you know, going to Home Depot. I'm going to get all the pieces, but someone has to put them together to do something meaningful. But with Gen AI, and particularly with ChatGPT, there were no pieces to put together. I could just go in, I could copy paste my cover data, and I could get value right there. So the ease with which you can get to value is so much there, and it's so clear, and it's so accessible, and it's so evident. I think that's what accelerated the journey to Gen AI versus to the cloud. With cloud, you felt like you needed a friend in IT to help you get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I fully agree with that. And I just think of how many people are experimenting and hat tip to ChatGPT for, you know, making it ubiquitous at like the speed of, I can't even characterize the speed of light. I mean, it was so quick that suddenly everybody's talking about it. You know, I'm watching the weatherman on the Good Morning America or whatever do his little ChatGPT thing on the weather. It's like, it's amazing. So I think there's two sides. I think it's just the incidental use that's happening because the organization is broadly trying it out, and consumers are doing it for all kinds of interesting things. And it's something people talk about at dinner parties. So what have you seen, or have you seen it do this? But I actually think the barriers to adoption for service-oriented environments were broken down by the trust that's grown with cloud services. So I think organizations are no longer having the debate like, are we going to put our data in cloud? To your point, Jeremy, they're saying they've already decided the data is in the cloud. And in a large number of organizations, they've decided that protected or sensitive data is going to be operated in cloud because the safeguards are there. And this is just a natural segue to the next generation of data. So I think there's the incidental piece, and then there's the planful part of it where people trust that the cloud service providers are doing good job at security, I think, and trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, yeah. Despite the optimism to me, I know we will see more breaches as a result of, the availability and ubiquity of these tools. What kind of novel sort of breach scenarios do you think we might see, Omar, as this tech becomes more and more encompassed into our platforms?
Yeah, I think for now, like the most common thing that we're seeing is lure development. So creating better phishing emails, creating better web pages for water holing attacks. I was talking to some threat intel folks, and they said, the big difference is to create content that was culturally and language appropriate and do it in multiple languages and do it well. Previously, you had to be aligned with some kind of a nation state. And so, run-of-the-mill cyber criminals did not have that kind of a capability because you need someone that understands French and someone that understands English and someone that understands Canadian French and on and on. So that localization, personalization wasn't there. With ChatGPT, now they have access to that. So the level, the quality of the phishing emails is significantly better than it has been. That's the big thing that they're seeing right now. The challenge is that from the good guys' perspective, we really don't know what the bad guys are doing. Now, there's a lot of debate and speculation that the bad guys might be using this to build and develop malware. That's true. The other thing that they're starting to do is the good guys have been using machine learning for quite some time. But as a result of this, now the bad guys are realizing, wait, we need to understand this machine learning thing. So as a result of that, I feel like they're going to get better at thwarting some of the defenses that we have that use machine learning, because now the bad guys are going to understand how these tools and technologies work. And there was a case maybe about 3-4 years ago where a security company, I'd rather not name them, but this is exactly what happened. There was a model inversion attack where the bad guys found out exactly how it was identifying whether something was malicious running on an endpoint, and they used knowledge of that AI model to basically be able to bypass it, and as a result, we don't really hear that company anymore.
Yeah, I can't really add much to it except to say that, there's a reduced, I think a reduced cost of attack that will happen because of use of AI, but I think there's also a harnessing of the capability on the defensive side and on the intelligence side. And so, I'm optimistic that the pace of both will stay in balance. But we'll see still. But I think staying tuned to it is really going to be key, and we'll clearly see new things, innovative things, and we should be as curious about that as we are about anything we're studying right now.
So not only are we all exploring incorporating AI, or we've already incorporated some kind of AI solution into our platforms and our offerings, that means our vendors have as well. So what does this mean for the vendor risk management practices that we maybe have in our own company?
Yeah, I'll start. I think so. I think we still work at getting better at third-party risk management broadly. I think this is an area we've leaned in on over the years, and there's a lot of industry leadership trying to do well. I mean, things like Health 3PT is a great example of that. But we're still growing. So I think in general, the opportunity to create dialogue and trust between companies and the companies that serve them and the customers of both companies is really key. So I don't think this impacts it, adversely or to a benefit in general. I think about it as the opportunity to open up yet another line of discussion and to think about, what are we learning together? So, the novel and the creative ways this is being done are opportunities to have the conversation. So I think we start with that, and I think we acknowledge the fact that we're going to have to talk about AI assurance and AI risk management and AI security, and understanding the ecosystem with the service providers and the AI users and the customers. It's going to be really key.
We had a customer that sent us a addendum to their contract for third-party risk, and it was an AI-related addendum, and it was very long. And so when I saw it, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize there's this many things that they would ask of us. So it was things like, anytime, we want to know what training data you're using, we want to know what models you have, anytime you change the training data, anytime there's an update to the model, anytime there's some drift from this, and it went on and on. And I'm like, wow, this is like a really pretty serious list. And at the end of it, I started having conversations with some of my colleagues, and I said, like, the only conclusion I can draw from this is they want us to not use AI. Because there's no way we could use AI in a meaningful way and adhere to their requirements. And so I figured maybe this was sort of a litmus test to see if anyone agrees to this, then that means they obviously don't know what they're doing. So that's sort of the situation we need to avoid. I love what Robert said, is to have those conversations, to build trust, to have the humility. You know, Jeremy and Robert talked about this yesterday morning during the AI session, and the way they laid out how HITRUST is going about this, incorporating the AI risk management items into 11.2 in the coming weeks, that's the right approach. Instead of jumping ahead and saying, we already have all the controls figured out and here's the control requirements, we could do that. It's not hard to find controls and to put them in, but what HITRUST is doing is really being thoughtful of, are we setting expectations that are so egregious that the customers that we have or the vendors that we have are going to end up saying, oh, you don't want us to use AI? So we've got to figure out how to move forward to say, yes, we want the business to get value from it. And yes, we don't really know exactly what controls that entails. And we're probably not going to start with the exact right set of controls. But we can't also say, we're just going to ignore this until we know the right answer. So we've got to figure out the right set of controls. And you know, there's a good chance that HITRUST, when they come out with the initial set of controls, 6 months or a year later, they say, oops. You know, that's a real reality, because there isn't that benefit of saying ISO 27001 or NIST or something else has been around for 5 years and we figured this out and the whole world agrees on it. This is really happening in real time. And the issue is, you know, you kind of want the cart before the horse, but not two before the horse. So what do? Do you do one, do the other? If you wait too long, then you're in trouble. If you go too early, you're in trouble. So this is a tough spot to be in. And I'd say this is really the opportunity to focus on getting TPRM right. The organizations that do TPRM right do what Robert talked about, is they're having conversations, they're building trust. They aren't just throwing over a document and saying, thou shalt do this, and I don't care what your problem is, and I'm not going to tolerate any red lines. Have those conversations, bring HITRUST in, bring in other folks from industry, get your vendors together and say, hey, we're not doing this because we want to be mean to you. We're not doing this because we want you to not use AI. We're doing this because we've got some responsibilities and we want to fulfill them. Can we work together and figure this out? Maybe there's some negotiation, maybe there's some give and take, but know that we're not coming from a place of trying to be mean.
You know, I want to chime on to the questionnaire example you mentioned earlier, because you know, I used to think about these, and I know you do as well, Omar, is that the opportunity to have the conversation, like, what are you really seeking with the questionnaire? Like, yeah. You know, and I'm sure it was a very significant company with a lot of leverage if somebody presumed to send out that level of questionnaire. Yeah. But, you know, it really is an opportunity to say maybe they haven't figured out yet what they need to worry about. So, you know, they've got smart analysts. They're just going to ask everything in the kitchen sink and hope you respond. And so you know, those types of conversations, I think, invite us to sit down and say, you know what, this is not possible, but what is it we're trying to accomplish together? Yes,
so that's cool.
Key. Thanks for your comments. Show of hands, who's received a questionnaire that asks about AI usage? I map a few, and I've seen them, and the questions, similar to your point, are sort of creative. So I look forward to working with everyone to help ease this friction as it arises, and hopefully we can get in front of it and sort of have a solution that works before, you know, the questionnaire land gets crazier and crazier. But thanks so much for your comments, not only on AI, but on sort of leadership as well. I think we're right at time. Any question or two before we convene this session? Okay, well, thanks for your attention.
Thank you all. Thank you, Omar. Thanks, Jeremy.